Distribution provided by Cloud Sigma, the cloud that adapts to you. Visit cloudsigma.com/thisweekin for a free $200 credit.
Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by ShareFile from Citrix. Secure file transfer built for business. Visit sharefile.com, click the microphone, and enter Twist for a free 30-day trial. And by New Relic. Visit newrelic.com/twist and see why thousands of developers worldwide don't deploy without it.
Hey everybody, it's Jason Calacanis, and today on the program, Matt Galligan is with me, and he is building a product that I am absolutely addicted to, and that is incredibly relevant to what's going on in the world today. It's called Circa. Go ahead and download it on your iPhone or iPad, and what he's doing is revolutionizing the news process and how we consume it. It's thumb-driven, and I really think that he's onto something very big, very, very big. And it's a true innovation in the space of news where people think we need to innovate because a lot of things are broken. We're going to learn a lot this hour about starting a company, about a mobile-first company, and about the future of media. Stick with us. It's going to be a great episode.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah. Money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
Hey everybody, this is This Week in Startups, and boy am I excited about today's program because on the program I have Matt Galligan, who has made a great product called Circa that a lot of intelligent people are buzzing about. And I spent 20 years in the media business studying and building editorial-based products, and this is one of the few that I've seen on mobile, along with Flipboard and very few others that I think is actually getting it right. And we're going to hear all about Circa today on the program. The design of it, the editorial approach, mobile first, all these important things. And if you're an entrepreneur, This Week in Startups is where we learn about great products and building great companies and trying to put a dent in the universe, taking a lot of risk, but being a founder and making something that, again, changes the world perhaps. And most of the time as founders, we fail. But we try hard, and we try to do innovative stuff, and I'm really excited to talk about those innovative things. And before we do, let me just take a quick moment to pause for the cause and thank our partners. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody, what a great interview we're having here talking about Circa and the future of news. And this show is brought to you by New Relic, and they are a great new service that I've been using for a little while now. Actually, I shouldn't say it's a new service. It's a service that a lot of us in the industry have been using to monitor how our software and how our services are doing. And it does it for me in real time. And I get these email reports, which are great because, I actually don't need to see it in real time myself. My people see it in real time. I need to see a weekly report or a daily report just to know that launch.co is up and running well, thisweekend.com is running well, Mahalo.com is running well. I need to know inside.com when it launches in September is running well. And what they do is, here, take a look at this report here. This is the real-time experience here, and you can look at the code level and the server level performance of your apps. You can find out, it's dipping, it's slower, why, and is that the page rendering, how the page renders on your browser? Is that the web application, the software you're using? Is it the network between your web application and the consumer on the page rendering side? And you can see the average server response time here under 100 milliseconds. That's great. The browser page load times, 3 seconds. That's not so good. And it seems to have gotten slower, and we got to figure out why that is. Is it because of the request queuing? Is it the network? Something happened here around 11:20, and then we can go look into that and figure out. It's still within range, 2.91 seconds. But the browser load time, as you see here, that's to completely load on the browser side, which is okay for it to be 3 seconds because there's a lot of images, it's a long page. And then, of course, I can see what's going on here. And what are the specific pieces of the app that are taking time to load, and the server resources, of course, what's going on with the physical memory or the CPU. Obviously, the CPU on a lot of these web apps is, very, very low, and the memory is critically important. The disk utilization can be a major thing, and here's your input output, how your NIC cards, your network interface cards are doing, what you're running Ubuntu, and how much RAM you got on the server. Well, that's kind of great stuff that you need to know, that you're running Ruby or Nginx. And we use it, like I said, here on all of our stuff. They've got 40,000 customers right now, including Skull Candy, Spotify, Nike, Zillow, Vonage, all these great companies. And developers across the spectrum trust their critical performance of their apps to New Relic. I bet you Circa uses it too. So if you want a super powered visibility to all your mobile apps, sign up today and you'll get a free This Week in Startup shirt. That's right, you'll get a Twist shirt. Go to newrelic.com/twist. Go to newrelic.com/twist. Okay, so just go to newrelic.com/TWIST. It's super fast, super easy, and no credit card is required. It's a great product. Everybody's using it, and I give them my highest recommendation. And again, we only talk about products here. We've got a 6-month waiting list to advertise on This Week in Startups because I'm doing it twice a week, and I'm not doing it any more than that. I'm telling you right now, 2 interviews for me is great. When we get to 3 or 4 interviews a week, I'm just exhausted. 2 is the perfect number. We're going to do 100 episodes a year. 6 months of ads sold out at a time. It's fantastic. And it's because the show is so great, the audience is so great, and the partners are so great. So when you hear this ad for New Relic, it's like you're hearing me giving you candid advice on what you should use to make your startup run better. I won't tell you to use a product if it's not absolutely awesome. New Relic is absolutely awesome. Let's get back to this great interview. Matt's a fascinating guy, and Circa is one of those news products that I am obsessed with. It's a great product. It's a great interview. Let's keep going. Hey, everybody, we're back. Thanks to our partners for making this happen. Matt Galligan of Circa is with us today. You can follow him on Twitter @MG, and you can go download his app, which is in the App Store. It's called Circa. Matt, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
You and I have talked about the product on Twitter, and you've been doing the internet thing for a little while now. You did SimpleGeo, sold to Airship, was that right?
Urban Airship.
Urban Airship bought it, and SimpleGeo was what? What was SimpleGeo? For the audience who doesn't know.
Yeah, of course.
He's like, but you know what SimpleGeo is, Jim. I always have to tell people this at the beginning of the video. I forgot to tell you. 2 things. 1, I'm going to ask questions that I know the answer to.
Okay.
Don't be thrown off by that like you just were. And number 2, I'm going to ask questions. Authenticity and honesty is the currency of the realm. Those are just so people know who watch the program. Those are the 2 things I tell people before the show begins, but I forgot this time. So number 1, I'm going to ask stupid questions sometimes, but for the benefit of the audience. And 2, be honest in all things. Okay, so tell us about SimpleGeo. What was SimpleGeo?
SimpleGeo was a developer infrastructure that made it easy for developers working on iPhone apps or other things to actually integrate location. And so it went well above and beyond things like Google Maps and made it easy to just integrate contextual relevance to location, places, many different things, but back-end ecosystem type stuff.
And wound up getting sold, and then you started Circa. I believe that was the order in which you did things?
Yeah, I took a little bit of time off to kind of explore, had a number of ideas that I was thinking through and working on, and ultimately kind of abandoned them because they felt like they were just too contrived.
What were those contrived ideas? That's always good because this is a great thing for entrepreneurs to know, which babies to kill. Like, what did you kill and why?
Yeah, so I had a couple of different ideas. The one that I probably spent the most time on was actually a photo app that was going to take all of the photos on all of your different networks and put them into one place, and then made it really easy to kind of consume and flip through and kind of rediscover. Now, it's kind of good because now I'm seeing all of these come out, Cluster being one of them, actually, that my friend Brendan did. But it seemed like it was going to be a really crowded space very quickly, and I also couldn't seem to find exactly what was going to make it a massive business. And having started 2 companies previously, I wanted to find an idea that I felt like I could build into a big, long-term, lasting company.
And I guess after doing SimpleGeo, finding that product market fit and product founder fit was at the top of your mind.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a consumer guy, and SimpleGeo was not a consumer product, and so I felt like I needed to get back into the game with consumer.
So tell us, what is Circa? I mean, how do you explain it? And we'll play some video over your description of this, of the actual product.
Sure. So Circa is a mobile native news app, company in general, but our first iteration is actually an iPhone app. And the idea behind it is, you've got a handful of minutes here and there to be able to catch up on things. It's this gap time that exists throughout the day. We don't consume news quite the same way that we used to, where it would be 40 minutes sitting down with a paper and a cup of coffee. Now it's you're waiting in line for coffee. You've got 5 minutes. How do you keep up with everything and not read incredibly lengthy articles, which is the way that most things get produced today? So it was first about creating a high quality user experience and making it really easy to consume. But then it was about the content itself. How do you make content mobile. And what we do is we have an editorial team that takes big stories, the big breaking stories of the day, breaks them down into core facts, stats, photos, things like that, what we call the atomic elements of news, and then presents them in a nice format. And then, so that makes it so that you can keep up really quickly, like catch up very, very fast to any of the stories in the day. And then the key feature that we have is the idea that you can follow news. And so rather than writing an article day in, day out, we're actually taking stories, letting them evolve over time, adding to them, building on them over time. And then as a user, I can follow them and get push notifications.
And so which story has been the most successful in terms of engagement and in terms of you tracking it? And I'm asking this in mid-April, towards the end of April in 2013 for people who don't know.
Yeah, so the biggest story by far for us has been, unfortunately, the Boston events of last week.
Yeah.
It was without doubt a crazy story that had many different evolutions and over the course of a week, and it all happened in a very concentrated time period. And so for us, what we consider to be solid engagement is when we get followers around a story, and then whenever updates to that story happen and push out a subsequent push notification, what does the activity look like after that? And it was just crazy to see how much people were coming back and back and back to the story. I know one of the stats that blew my mind was between Monday and Friday of last week, we had more than a handful of users opening the app 100 times or more.
Wow.
And
in a
that-
5-day period, which is 20 times a day on
In
average.
5 days, yeah.
Yeah. And what does that speak to in terms of consumption of news and how that changes on mobile?
Well, I think,
Or just how it's changing in general?
that bit is a bit extreme, obviously, but I think that any app that can constantly re-engage a user, I think, is going to be really important, because you've got all of these apps on your phones. Which one do you pick to go into? And having this follow feature means that we can stay in tight with the user and keep them coming back.
Yeah. And so in that news case, we heard a lot of criticism of media this week, that media is broken.
Yeah.
And that media did a bad job. Social media, communities like Reddit or 4chan, even CNN, people were blaming for doing it. But it seemed like it was an equal condemnation of the entire media space,
Right.
From social to message boards to television to newspapers. Do you agree that media is broken and they did a bad job? Or do you think they did a tremendously good job?
I think that there is a spectrum.
Okay.
I think that there was good and bad. I think that it was an incredibly complex and difficult event to cover. You had many different details coming out at many different times. And we're also in this bizarre period with media where I think media in general, CNN as an example, is struggling to figure out, how do we work with Twitter? Is it, do we still try to be faster than Twitter in getting some of these details out? So I'll mention that in a second, but there was a lot of misinformation. There was a lot of just straight up bad reporting. But I think that things worked pretty well, all things considered.
Yeah, intelligent people seem to think that the process, although maybe different than how we previously consumed this stuff, which would be like the day after, or maybe we watch CNN live, the process might be faster or more spontaneous or a little more dispersed, but overall, people felt more informed, I think.
I think so. I think the challenge is that you can't just believe everything coming through on a Twitter stream. It's happening in such real time that you have to step back and realize, there's so much going on. Use Twitter as a tool, not as the end.
Almost like be your own journalist.
Yeah, of course. And that's something that
Because you are seeing the sources in real time.
Right.
In some cases.
Well, and in some cases, those sources came from, Reddit or things like that. And it's like it gets a little bit...
or they could be trolls just putting out false information. It could be people with agendas.
Absolutely. And I think Reddit was interesting this week, seeing how you had people kind of jumping on this like almost citizen investigation type stuff. And that's inevitable, and that's going to keep happening. I think it's how we react to that's going to be important. Almost like when an investigation is ongoing, it should be behind closed doors, because you never know what kind of crazy misinformation might get out there and how it might truly affect the actual investigation.
But some argue there's no way for it to occur behind doors, because the evidence and the people are occurring in real time. In the example of the Michael Arrington and Jen Allen back and forth, you had one person claiming she was raped and beaten by one individual, and the other person saying they weren't, on Twitter, back and forth and back and forth. They were acting this out, and it still doesn't have a resolution. They were acting this out in real time before the news even covered it.
In the public.
In the public. So it can't go back behind closed doors, it seems.
I think it's maybe then how it is reacted to by these news organizations after the fact. And
How
so
should they react? Yeah. What, is there a best practice emerging?
Well,
How do you do it?
We'll I'll spend a second on how we did it, but knock on wood for the future. But I can tell you that without a doubt, for the week of the coverage of Boston, Circa never ran a single inaccuracy at all.
Wow. How did you manage that? Because you were questioning?
We questioned everything. First off, we don't run a single thing as a confirmed report unless we've actually got multiple sources confirming the exact same thing. And then there are some things that get a little suspect, like when some names started to get thrown out about a potential suspect for the Boston Marathon bombing. We were very questioning as to whether or not it was true, and we didn't run it. If I look back at the chat logs on our news team is distributed, if I look back, there's a lot of argument back and forth as to whether or not one detail gets run versus another. But we have a responsibility to tell the truth. And we know that Twitter is always going to be faster than us. And so because we accept that, we can slow down a little bit and do our best to get the actual truth out there.
So speed is important, but not the be-all, end-all for Circa.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a responsibility that any news organization should have now. It should be the ones that are confirming the reports and doing the investigation on the reports, not just standing on air reading tweets that they happen to be seeing flying by. I think that's doing a disservice to the people that are watching the news.
And in this case, we had Reddit debating who could potentially have done the bombing based upon photographic evidence. They did a remarkably good job at finding the people and also finding people who happened to be carrying backpacks that were sagging, that were innocent.
It was really incredible.
How do you cover that?
That's an incredibly difficult situation. I think that, first off, we might cover the fact that it's happening, and we might cover the kinds of things that people are doing to discover how this is working, but we're not going to cover the people mentioned, and we're not going to cover the data that they throw back and forth until it actually is something.
And why is that? Is there a benchmark when you would? So let's say in this specific example, okay, 2 people with backpacks are seen at 3 different locations, and there's photographic evidence, and there's multiple different angles, because that's sort of what started to happen.
Sure.
Is there a point at which you say Reddit believes it's closing in, but don't show the photos or don't mention the people? Or do you say, hey, Reddit feels like they're reaching consensus, and Reddit believes these are the people, and huge disclaimer here?
I think if we can be forthcoming about what details are known, and if it's something that will get resolved, I think that we can stand out in front of it and help debunk different things. Like there's one blog post we threw out recently about when misinformation gets out there. It's not just about not repeating that misinformation, but also identifying that misinformation for your readers and saying, hey, this was wrong, because even if they got it from another news outlet, as a news organization, we may still have a responsibility to readers to debunk things that were reported inaccurate elsewhere.
So this advocacy for the truth, advocacy for clarity for the user becomes the guiding principle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can't just rely on the fact that somebody is only reading you anymore. If it was a newspaper, you had that one newspaper and that was your one source of truth. We have many sources of truth now, and we can't just trust the one source that we're seeing. And as a news organization, we can get out there in front of some of these problems and debunk things. And I think that leads to a greater responsibility to our readers.
The design of the product is gorgeous. You've heard
Thank
that
you.
before. How important is the design and structure of news to the experience today?
Well, design around news has always been important. If you think about newspaper, I mean, newspapers were the pinnacle of typography and layout design and all of these things. It's like, how do you get somebody compelled to read columns of text? So when we decided that we wanted to do, Circa and the various ways that we wanted to communicate news, we knew design was going to be of utmost importance. So I actually reached out to the person that designed my first company's social thing. And he was, 17 at the time when he was working on social thing with me. And we picked him up to work with me to do Circa's design. And it's been really interesting because neither of us come from a background where we're ever doing, print design or newspaper.
You can give him a shout out, by the way, I don't mind.
Yeah, Tim Shundo is a phenomenal designer. But I think that going forward, there's a lot of things that are going to need to be tried and experimented with, because a lot of how we've presented news so far is great, but I think there's a lot of opportunity to change and adapt and do something different than we've done in the past.
I notice the chunking of the news, which is really great. I really like that feature where you can flip and get the next chunk. And obviously you can follow a topic. So if a new chunk, I just call them chunks. If a new chunk comes in, you called them, I think, facts before. Or
points.
Something. Points, yeah. So points, chunks. So a new point comes up, I get an alert, okay, because I was following the SpaceX or the Dragon capsule.
Sure.
And so that was great. I could see the update. This chunking that occurs, I noticed there's not social media and discussion around the chunk. And I was just thinking, I would like to comment on a chunk. Is that something that would then be problematic for what you're doing, or would it be accretive to what you're doing?
I think it's something that we want to add.
Yeah.
It's something where news or comments around news have historically been bad. Like the content itself is bad. It's all about an ego game. It tends to get devolve and things like that. So first off, we want to do it. We just have to find the right approach. And I think we found a really interesting way to think about these things. I think that people want a platform to talk about news, but I think that they want to do so in a way where it's actually additive to the experience and not subtractive.
Yeah.
And the way that we think about commenting and things like that around our content is that our content is factual, it's snappy, it's to the point. We don't add opinion, we don't add bias. This is an opportunity for our users to bring up opinion, and then for us to be able to surface those opinions so that, we're good at what we're good at, and then we allow our readers to, flesh out the opinion a little bit further.
So if we're on a controversial topic, let's say gun control, which I was following, and you guys did a pretty solid job on that as well, you don't have to take a position on, is our background checks reasonable or not? You can state who's opposed to it, what a background check is, how it's defined, where the vote wound up, and let other people
absolutely
just fire away in the comments.
Right, of course.
And just gives you a little bit of clarity and mission there.
That's the idea.
All right, when we get back from the commercial break, the sponsor break, the partner break, I want to talk about how you're going to make money, speaking of partners and pauses for the cause. So let's just take a quick break here for our partner's message. I just want to take a moment from this great interview to talk about ShareFile by Citrix. It's designed for business, and with ShareFile, you can send files of almost any size securely. And we use it here at This Week In Launch and at inside.com to request files, to get email alerts when somebody's uploading or downloading these files, and to share large video clips. You can see here how granular and feature-rich this software is. You can see the top files that we're sharing. You can take a look at the uploads, the downloads, the people editing and moving stuff around. And you can do all this auditing of the activity log based on date. So you can say, hey, show me what's going on the last week, the last month, et cetera. And here's how we use it. We get people to send their ads in. Here's a source bit spot. And I can see who in our team has access to it. You can control that access on a pretty granular level, and it works really well. So visit sharefile.com, click on the radio microphone button, and use the promo code TWIST. That's right. Go to sharefile.com, click the radio microphone button, and use the promo code TWIST. No credit card required. 30-day free trial. And you know what? We started a Twist Club where you can gain access to a special video file. Yes, that's right. We'll drop it right into your ShareFile. It is the top 10 questions that have ever been asked and answered on the 350 episodes or so of This Week in Startups. These are the 10 best questions, and Kieran and the team put a lot of work into this. So step 1, you sign up for ShareFile and use the promo code TWIST, TWIST. Step 2, you just send us request a file link to sharefile@launch.co. So you just say request a file link, sharefile@launch.co. Really easy. And this file is only available by those requesting it through ShareFile. So it's a little special treat we have for you. Thanks to our friends at ShareFile. Everybody say thank you at ShareFile, by at Citrix on their Twitter account. Thank ShareFile for putting together a great product that you're going to really love and for making independent media like This Week in Startups possible. Let's get back to our interview with Matt from Circa. And welcome back, everybody, and thank you to my partner for one of my great partners. It was either ShareFile or New Relic, both of which products we use here and we love. So a large part of what's wrong with media today seems to be the revenue model. Mm-hmm. We saw newspapers lose subscriptions to print. We saw them lose classified ads to Craigslist. And what's left? Advertising. And they're trying to reintroduce the subscription online to varying degrees of success. But obviously the cost structure of large enterprises has just absolutely collapsed on itself. And we're seeing every local newspaper just downsize, if not shut down. You guys are going to need to make money at some point. Mm-hmm. You've raised an angel round back in April of 2012. Oh, no, January you did 750 in January of 2013, you did 750 and 900 back in April. So you're right now doing the angel investing thing, but at some point, something's going to have to pay the bills aside from investors. What will that be?
We've got a few different things that we're thinking through and a few different things that we're actually implementing or in the process of implementing. I think the way that we think about news monetization is that, first off, news had the same monetization tools for literally 100 years. And then all of a sudden, one day, they're gone. It was like off a cliff. And advertising being one of those things, and the way that it gets done on the web is just these banner ads and things like that I mean, as a user, I've become blind to.
It's completely ineffective.
It's not an additive experience. And I think that advertising, to me, when I think back to when advertising was high quality and something that people actually cared about, you look at, and I'll use Mad Men as the example, you look at that Mad Men era where information was actually conveyed through advertising because we didn't have the internet and I couldn't go on and search for what camera I should be buying. It was the ads that were telling me which ads I should be buying. And so ads were something that was a medium to tell people what should I purchase.
Yeah.
And that was an additive experience. Today, it's not at all. And so the way that I think about advertising is actually along the lines of, for instance, like what BuzzFeed is doing with sponsored content, with native advertising. I think that there are ways to be forthcoming with a user saying this is sponsored content, but still have something of value to somebody. And those are some of the things that we're thinking through with Circa, being able to do sponsored content, being able to sponsor categories, being able to still convey truthful news, but be able to do so in a way where we have obviously partners and money coming in to be able to develop that content. And that's the first bit of what we're thinking through.
And native advertising, for the audience that may have just heard that term for the first time, it's a relatively new term. We're under a year for people using that term. How do you define native advertising?
I define native advertising as being able to tell a message, whether or not it is paid for by the sponsor and the story itself was paid for by the sponsor, or you pair a story with a sponsor because it happens to be relevant to the two, between the two. BuzzFeed has done a great job of this, and the way that they're doing it is you take your voice, you take your style, you take your design, you take everything that is internal that people like about your particular company, and then you develop an ad product around it. I think one of the best examples that I've seen is Uncrate, which is a blog for stuff for guys. It's like cars and gadgets and fashion and things like that. But they did an amazing job with this where, every week or so they do a post called Garb. And it's an outfit. It's just an outfit that you might find, here's a shirt and here's some pants and here's some sunglasses. Every once in a while, it would be sponsored. So J. Crew will come in and say, here is Garb by J. Crew. And it's the same format. It's the same kind of thing. But now it's all J. Crew material.
Got it.
Still additive, still useful for me to as a user,
right?
And as a reader, but sponsored.
And so, in a way, it's more effective advertising for both the seller and buyer in this case, or the consumer, because it's content, right? And
Absolutely.
It's in the format in which people like. How clear do you feel people are being with native advertising? Because it's, when done well, is indistinguishable. At its best, it's indistinguishable from regular editorial. That's if you do a great job. So therefore, are users going to be covertly advertised to. And, when I open up my Facebook app on mobile and I see Intuit is liked by my friend, I thought that was actually genuine, and it actually said sponsored in light gray. Are people doing enough to make it clear in your mind?
I think I've seen good and bad.
Yeah.
I think
Some
BuzzFeed
examples,
has done a great job.
Have they?
I think when you're on the main page and you're scrolling through, certainly. Once that gets out via social media and you come into it through social media, I think it's still delineated, but does it matter? Like, does it matter that when I'm scrolling through these pictures of cats that happen to be, sponsored by Friskies, like, does it matter that it's actually sponsored, or is it just still interesting content?
That's I guess the moral question, but does it, or that's like an existential question. Does it matter that it was paid for or not because it's done so well? But I guess the question is, disclosure is, by the FTC, necessary.
Sure.
Right. We have this consumer protection. So you're saying when you do see it in that main feed, it's clearly says our partner post. And I agree with that. But when it's a very astute and, textured point you're making, which is when you get a permalink page and you just see 10 cats, nobody really takes the time to look for, it's so tightly connected to the native editorial that you wouldn't even see that it's a partner post.
The way that I would liken this to something else going on today is to think about movies and television. Because if you were to watch a television show today, you're probably being advertised to far more than you realize. Because as soon as he pulls up, I watched Community a few days ago, the episode of Community. And I noticed it because I'd recently purchased one, but the HTC One, which is a new Android device, new flagship Android device, the the dean of this college in this show pulls one out of his pocket and he's using it on the show. Now, that was paid for. There's no question to me that was paid for. And
but you're assuming that.
Well, I'm assuming that.
Right.
But again, going back to what consumers see, consumers don't know. It's like when the car that Tony Stark and Iron Man drives is an Audi R8. Yeah. Audi paid for that. They paid for part of that movie to make that scene happen. And and as a consumer, do I, number one, care? It's in there. It's a cool product or whatever it is.
The R8 happened to be the car of the moment.
It's already happening in television, in film, in music, and music videos and things like that. It's inevitable that it's going to make it to this
Should there be a disclosure? Like when you see the car on the screen, should there be a little thing that is a star that says that was paid for?
I believe they were working on that in Europe, in the UK, right? Where there's a little indicator that comes up as part of the screen that says this is sponsored or something like that.
Wow, how annoying to the narrative that you're watching a James Bond film and like when the Heineken is in his hand or the BMW
or the Breitling watch gets pulled out.
Oh my God! It would have to have like a little floating pop-up video.
The question is like, is it additive? Does it matter? Do we care?
Well, that's an artistic question, isn't it?
I think so, but distinguishing, let's say, BuzzFeed content from the Atlantic debacle, if you remember,
yes, the Scientology and the type of thing. Describe it for the people who don't know.
So there was a moment where there was a native advertising bit done by the Atlantic that was Scientology, and they were talking about their recent buildings that they had. Or,
there were huge victories,
and it was fascinating
because they're crushing it.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yes, they're doing so well.
That was a case where coming in from the Atlantic property, you would have known that was a sponsored content. It was completely indistinguishable from their normal content if you came in through social media.
Right.
So all of a sudden, it looked as though the Atlantic was
writing a story,
fluffing up about Scientology.
Yeah.
And that is totally off-brand for them, completely. And so that is an example where I think the kind of content is what matters.
I think, and maybe I'm being a cynic, that they knew that was going to occur, or at the very least Scientology knew that was going to occur, or that they may have manufactured that controversy. Because if you think about the amount of attention that it got 100 times the attention, 1,000 times the attention perhaps, than it would have gotten if it hadn't been so orthogonal to their brand, which is a brand that's based on cynicism and truth, which religion sort of is a target of typically.
I think it's interesting. I mean, I couldn't decide one way or another whether or not that's
Did you think that too, though, that there was a bit of like, let's see if we can poke the tiger and push the envelope by somebody?
I actually thought it was one hell of a flub. I don't think that it was...
You just think pure mistake?
I think it was a pure mistake, and I think that it was a mistake, but I don't think that they intended on it getting... Like, whether or not it was intended or not, when you think about it, it's social media that blew it up. It was and then it became this cyclical thing where it just blows up and blows up and blows up, and it gets hotter and hotter and hotter. And I think that that's probably something that they didn't intend.
Yeah. I think that the Scientology marketing department basically gamed or trolled the Atlantic.
It's possible.
I think that they knew that it would get a disproportionate response, and maybe even manufactured some of that kindling for the fire that eventually
It
burned.
would be smart if that was the case.
I think so. And so I could see, though, very well that you've created this nice, tight editorial format that if a BMW comes out with a new electric car, that following that electric car and seeing the updates as it goes, that would be something that BMW would be pretty pleased with.
Absolutely. I mean, it creates a closed loop relationship between the advertiser and the individual being advertised to. And frankly, it's interesting content. It shows intent, possibly to purchase. So, and as a reader, if I actually care about this electric car thing, then, why does it matter that it's an advertiser providing this information to me? I still think that I go back to the era of Mad Men and think, it is information. It's information coming to me that might help me with my purchase patterns, whatever it is. It's just something interesting to me.
What does the New York Times or CNN think about what you're doing? Obviously, when you got a startup that's starting to innovate or collect heat like this, how do they look at you? I'm sure some of them have reached out. What is the mainstream media thought of your process?
Well, the process, we'll separate the process from the product.
Yeah.
The product itself, I think,
You're on the radar.
I've actually spoken with, CNN and New York Times and various heads over there. And I think that they look at us with intrigue. I think that, they, and I don't want to say jealousy because that's not the right word, but we were able to do something that they are not able to do because they have legacy, right? They have a legacy business model. They have a legacy. And I don't mean like old. I just mean that they have things to worry about that I don't frankly have to worry about. And I can find new and interesting ways to do things and move much, much faster than a big behemoth of a news company. And
that has to get the Sunday Times out every Sunday for 5 million people to
And they have
read.
to do their pitches. All the editors pitching to, who gets the lead and who,
If anything, they're jealous of your freedom. Yeah.
That is absolutely right. I believe that is possible.
Now, the format, when they look at the format, you're not doing original reporting, you're doing meta reporting.
We're doing original content.
Content.
And yeah, that's the way that I would put it. Meta reporting is actually a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
And I think that when people look at it at face value, they think that we're just doing straight sourcing, like we're taking one source, rewriting it a bit, and then sticking it into our pieces. But that's not it at all. And so we actually go through a very traditional process when we're developing our news. When we identify a story that needs to be written, our writers go out there and collect the sources that they think are most appropriate to put in there. And then they go and identify, here are the 5 facts that we need to convey. And they say, on a point-by-point level, here is one fact, and it's corroborated by 4 sources. And in our back end, it's actually supported in that way.
Yeah.
We require them to list every source with every single point.
And you get that in light gray at the bottom of the update, or how is that?
There's a little I button, and on the I, you can actually open up and see the sourcing for everything.
Yeah. And so do they feel you're leveraging their product too much? How do they, do you get that sort of mainstream media disdain of reblogging? Because I know when we did Engadget and Autoblog, there was, and Joystick and a bunch of these blogs, people felt like, oh, well, you're riffing off of our 10,000 word article, and on a 10,000 word article, we might write 5 blog posts.
Yeah.
Now we've got 5 items SEO'd against 1 item, and we win the traffic war.
Sure.
And we're writing it based on what they're doing. So there was this original, I don't want to say disdain, but they looked down upon Engadget. A lot of the traditional, tech journalists, like Peter Rojas was doing something like, I don't know, he was just giving his opinion,
Sure.
or he was just riffing on what they had already discovered. But his opinion was so much more interesting than their original reporting that he built a huge brand off of it. How did they look at you reblogging them in that parlance, or rewriting them, or redigesting them, meta reporting?
Because it's multiple source, I don't think they have the same kind of problem that if we were to take one source, one story, and tell it in a different way. I think that it's a very big distinction. And frankly, we haven't had people reaching out to us and complaining specifically about that. We have some specific journalists that have been like, I'm not sure about that. And then we have a conversation with them and they're like, okay, that's actually pretty cool. As far as the way that we collect our facts, the way that we put it together, the way that we put it out there.
And what was the reaction? I mean, take me through an example without mentioning the journalist, but how did they approach you and what did they say?
Well, originally, so this conversation actually happened a few days ago with an individual where they thought that we were inherently hiding, like trying to prevent people from going to the original sources through our little button that you can click and see that. Now, we were like, first off, it's not hiding. These are sources that we're citing. And those sources, it may be that one fact comes from 4 different places. And is it valuable to the reader to know that that one fact was in these 4 places? Or is it valuable for people to know the fact and then for us to send people on to an appropriate place to read further? And so,
because you do have those little blurbs where you'll call out a New York Times story.
Yes, absolutely.
So they feel like they're getting some level of payback, perhaps.
That's the idea.
Some reciprocation from that.
Yes, that's the idea.
But if you didn't have that, boy, would they be upset.
I think that would be that would happen.
Which is the Huffington Post and the Business Insider folks. That's a valid concern people have about their products.
It does happen. Yeah, single sourcing type stuff. Yes.
Take a moment to let mom and dad go out. Don't worry about it. It's just easy edit. No worries.
What's that? I'll just give you a call.
Yeah, we'll be out in 10 minutes. I think we're...
I'm sorry.
Oh, nothing to be sorry about. How's he doing so far?
Him?
Yeah,
You're both great.
good. Good conversation?
We've learned a lot. I don't want to leave.
You're like, now I know what Circa is.
Oh, she is it?
Thank you for the compliments on him.
Yes.
Oh,
Thank you very much.
it's heartfelt. Trust me.
I'll see you in a sec.
It's so cute. It's great.
They just don't get to see what I do, so I
That's so
try to-
awesome. I'm going to make sure we tell people to do that more often. So let's get back into that. Huffington Post, really, and Business Insider too, when in their worst moments, which I would say is probably, like a third of their editorial, they're simply cribbing other people's stories. I mean, outright stealing, some people would call it. Do you agree with the stuff they do, like at that lower end? Obviously, like, you get Henry Blodgett or Ariana Huffington or George Clooney writing some great piece, or great debated, but whatever, an opinion piece. So that's obviously valid original content. But when they do that reblogging and then they out SEO and out social the original source, what do you think of that?
I think it's a hard question.
What do you really think? I mean,
personally,
you're a news guy.
What I think I would prefer is, let's just say, like a short snippet and traffic back. Something like what John Gruber does with his
Daring
Fireball stuff. So I like that kind of the link bloggy type stuff where you're sending traffic. You're saying, I've identified this interesting thing. Here you go.
Yeah, and maybe here's my take on it.
Sure.
Because he does have perspective.
But this sort of remix culture, this like sort of thing where even like Tumblr's reblogging and stuff like that. Now, what's great about Tumblr is they have built into the product attribution very cleverly, where no matter what, you can always find the original source of a particular reblog. It's like they're built into the metadata and it exists. The problem is we don't have that kind of thing inside of this ecosystem. And sometimes it gets bad because if you were to take a piece that maybe had a factual inaccuracy behind it, and you copied that over and you reported on that, well, when that original piece gets updated, it doesn't update elsewhere. And so you can start to have some of these weird chains of events. And honestly, I think that stuff is going to fall out. I think it's going to, I don't think it's a valuable medium right now.
So it's just trickery. It's people trying to SEO game and get a little bit extra traffic. And
hey, it worked. I mean, there's no
Post, it worked,
question.
like, yeah.
And so now the question is,
fake it till you make it.
was that candy? Would just taste good and you just wanted more and more and more of it? Or how do we get to something more substantial?
It does feel like people are optimizing for wasting time. I mean, you go to Business Insider. I mean, I'm not going to harp on Business Insider, but the two sites that did garner the most traffic, and BuzzFeed would be the third, they all seem to share in common this theft. Most journalists would call it theft, I believe, of other people's IP, under the auspices of fair use, or I rewrote it, which you're doing as well, rewriting, but for some reason when they've executed on it, it feels like stealing.
Well,
Why does it leave such a bad taste in people's mouths?
Distinguishing us from the rest of the process, it's the single source piece. It's the fact that there was one place and they took that one bit of content and translated it, right? And in Circa's case, it's many different things. We're identifying the fact and then we're creating our own thing. There was an interesting tool that came out, I think it was yesterday, and I don't even remember the name of it, but one of our engineers pointed it out. The idea that you could copy and paste something in, that let's just say it was a potential rewrite, and then it would scour its database of news and then figure out what the original place for that was.
Right, by timestamp or something.
And it was just like, okay, what words are they shifting around and stuff like that? So we actually were like, well, let's test ourselves. And we threw some of our own news in there.
Yeah.
And it didn't come up, which meant that we're doing a significantly good job in I don't call it rewriting, but identifying a fact and then producing content around that fact. Yeah. And then going the extra step of citing those sources. It's very, very different things. But I do think that when you take one source, remix it, and then put it back out there, that's just not necessarily something that I'm too keen on.
Yeah, and you seem to be very keen on a serious tone. Do you think that that's the opportunity, or do you think the BuzzFeed kittens is the opportunity? I noticed a distinct lack of kittens. So why no kittens?
Well, I think that there are many different ways to take a product. I think that people are in a place where entertainment feels good. They just want to feel good and they want to see all these things. Now, BuzzFeed does a really interesting thing where you can kind of get lost in this very, kind of levity of just running through all of these funny posts and cats and so on and so forth. And then there's one about gun control, right? And I think that is sort of like the Trojan horse for people, where it's they're just being entertained to, and they just think they're being entertained to, and then all of a sudden there's something serious. Yeah. And they're still like, yeah, cool, done, got it, read it. Yeah. And that's awesome. And I think that that's just a different angle of looking at it. In our case, it's just not something that is core to our product. We want to get the news out there, and we want to be a newspaper for people, and we want to be some place that they can trust, that they can see, whatever the news of the day is. And so we want to be ultimately informative to our readers. And so it just doesn't align with our goals.
You see yourself as a better version of the New York Times, Washington Post, as opposed to a better version of Gawker?
Yes.
Or BuzzFeed?
We are a publication,
yeah,
and that's the way that I see it.
And the people who you hire, they're doing this meta reporting, as I called it, but this deep research-based reporting. Is that a different type of traditional journalist? Who are you hiring to do this? What is the hiring? Who makes a good Circa journalist?
They are journalists.
Yeah.
These are people that have written for The Atlantic, have written for the LA Times, that came out of J School. That these are the kind of people that we're looking for, and these are guys that just want to inform the world. We don't have bylines in our product, and that's part of it. And part of the hiring process is making sure, hey, are you cool with no bylines? And
very Economist, right? Like the Economist.
Just like that, yeah. And the idea is that these people are concerned around the overall quality of the product, of all the news, right? And it's not just their own contribution, but it's the totality of all of their work together that they feel prideful about. And so it is a different kind of journalist that we look for, but I can tell you that it is without a doubt, high quality journalists that we've been hiring.
And at some point, do you tip over and do original reporting? And have those acts of random original reporting occurred already?
I think that there are ways to do it. I think that, though, the way that we think about it is we're trying to develop the most efficient ways of developing news, and we've already done that for our current process. Reporting by nature is a highly inefficient process, and doing investigative reporting and things like that. So how do we identify good ways of getting that done without it becoming a money pit, for example? And I think we've got some interesting ways, but it's going to be a little while before we can implement them.
Ask a question. Yeah.
I mean, that's a very simple way of getting it done. But
I could see that when you're flipping through, just asking a question like, is there somebody in the Circa audience who works at SpaceX who would comment on this?
Sure. And opening up that wall and providing an outlet. I think there are definitely opportunities.
And so who are the investors in the company, and what do you need to do to get it? And I know Ben Ha from Cheeseburger was one of the founders. Yeah?
Yes.
So what do you have to prove? You raised another 750 just this year. That obviously takes you out about a year, I'm guessing. So what do you have to prove a year from now to get that big venture round? Because VCs, I'm a content guy too, obviously. Boy, do they hate news. Boy, do they hate content.
Yeah.
So angel investors, you can line up real quick. But the news,
I think that we had to prove that things could be done different. And in our case, one of the things around content specifically is that we have found out that our model, traditional content production model, is linear, meaning that the more people I add behind it, the more news gets created, but it was always across the same line. Our content production ended up being exponential, and we didn't even know it. It just kind of happened that way. And that's because when a story like the Lance Armstrong case happens and we build one story to start and it's 5 points, and then over time it's like, oh, there's one new update. We add one new point, and then 2 weeks later, one new point. Everywhere else, they're creating these boilerplate 500 or 1,000 word pieces for every update. And so our process ends up being more efficient because we add one new update and go on and do the next story. And one new update, go to the next story. And so rather than it being linear over time, the more of this base of content that we develop, the more it just draws that line upward and creates this exponential thing. So we're trying to go in, and when we talk to these investors and things like that, it's about, we've created an insanely efficient way of producing news. And as a result of that, it turns out that the reading experience is actually fantastic. It's just, it
reminds me of Weblogs Inc., where we actually told people, if you take the editor out, and you take 2/3 of the cost out, because the editors got paid twice as much as the writers, and the content turned out better if it was a passionate writer. So when you got rid of Peter Rojas's editor, or Ryan Block's, they actually made better content.
Sure.
Or Shani Jardin from Boing Boing, who worked for me for a long time. If they weren't edited, they were better.
It's definitely an interesting concept, right?
Like, okay, we're spending less money on their words, and the words are getting better. What just happened?
If you can illustrate, how you're different and how you're taking things that would otherwise be very inefficient about a content production model and show, hey, this can be done differently, then not only is it interesting from a company standpoint, but it's a disruptive thing. It's like everybody else is doing it this way, and they're all tanking in different ways, but we've got this new angle on it, and then as a result, we can succeed. So I think those are the kinds of messages we want to convey.
Well, listen, Matt, it's a great product, and I'm a huge fan, and I've been using it and very impressed. Obviously, I'm building Inside.com, which is going to be in the news space as well, and not exactly the same, but I think there's going to be a whole cohort of people, Flipboard, I guess, yourselves, and has anybody else? I mean, Flipboard, interesting, yeah?
Yes. If we think of Circa like a magazine or like a newspaper, I think of Flipboard like a magazine. Where it's just lots of content for me to consume casually. And I think that they're doing some interesting things with being able to curate, for instance, your own magazine.
That's a fascinating concept.
It's really interesting.
I really thought that was interesting. Is there anybody else that you look at and say, that's fascinating and interesting? Because I get Circa and Flipboard, and then I go onto my iPhone, and it's a big, long drop-off.
I absolutely love Prismatic, actually.
Prismatic.
I think they do a fantastic job of identifying things that I would find interesting. Now, again, it still feels like a magazine to me, where it's just an endless amount of content that could be interesting to me. And I probably open up a story, probably 5% of the time. But it's still interesting to go through and have it learn all these things that I like, and then be able to find like the one gem of an article that I may not have seen elsewhere. Yeah. So I use Circa, Prismatic, Flipboard, a handful of other things, but those are the ones that I would concentrate on.
Well, listen, Matt, this has been great. Everybody follow @MG and follow @Circa on Twitter, and download the app and play with it. It's every 2 or 3 months a great update comes, and you're making great progress. I think, God, just please don't sell to the New York Times. I know they're going to try to take you guys out early. I hope that you can raise that venture round and really go for the long ball here. Because
we've got some really interesting things coming up. So
awesome.
I hope so too.
All right, don't sell. You're not going to sell. So the New York Times comes right now and provides a 20x return for your investors. You have to sell, or are you long?
I'll be honest, I'm long on this business. I've sold 2 companies before, both, the first one sold in 15 months, the second one 24 months. I want to prove that we can become the mobile news company. In the same way that CNN came along and took the television format and made it their own and developed that, we want to become synonymous with mobile news. We want to be the mobile news company.
All right, well, please don't give up. Don't sell. Please don't sell.
I'll do my best, Jason.
Please don't sell, because I really think that like if this exists 5 years from now, it's going to really hit its stride in year 4, 5, and 6. All right. Hey, and thanks to our sponsors, New Relic and ShareFile. Everybody go thank at New Relic and thank at ShareFile for sponsoring independent media like This Week in Startups. And you should go support independent media like Circa. If you're an ad buyer for like, I don't know, BMW or Coca-Cola or Red Bull, just get like your checkbook out, $50,000 experimental budget, give them 50 dimes and let them play. It's worth it, right, Matt?
I think so.
We'll see you next time on This Week in Startups.